Hi, welcome to SABIFF. We are so excited to bring you SABIFF 2023. We have a lot going on hybrid, both online and virtually here in San Antonio. And what I want to do was really bring different aspects of productions so folks can know what type of one, career paths are available out there, and two, what type of jobs are there that really do not have a lot of people of African descent working in these fields. And so we put together a post production panel, which basically a lot of people don't know anything about post production other than editing. But post production, we put together a panel called Fix It in Post, pulling the last straw to save productions. So that's pretty much charting a path for overlooked careers in television. We're going to just do a real talk panel, post-production professionals that delve into the opportunities in post-production work, job challenges, and survival tactics in the area that houses minimal faces of color. So I want to first bring on Patrick Coleman. And I want you all to introduce yourselves and tell you what's your HBCU. But I'm going to bring you on Patrick out of LA. We have everybody from LA. Edgar Davis, DC based now, but out of LA, working in LA. And Megan Cutchins. So welcome you all. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you all for joining us.
Glad to be here. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So let's just start off by just telling our audiences what we mean when we say post. What does post production entail? Can you kind of break it down? I'm just throwing that out there. You all feel free to jump in as you see. Patrick, let's start with you since you're a post production producer. What does that
Yeah.
entail?
So I'm getting a little bit of feedback, but I'll just push through. Yeah. So basically, for me, it's everything after production. So you got the preparation, you got the physical production, and then once the physical production is done, it's basically the team that puts everything together: the editing, the sound work, the finishing picture work, cleaning up actor marks, removing, adding VFX, even sometimes doing beauty work on people. So it's all those aspects of putting the final picture together and delivering it on time.
Go ahead, Edgar.
What was the question? I'm sorry. But I'm just saying, you had
I
Patrick.
was just saying, people don't really get a full idea of what post is. They just think editing. They don't know who's
Yeah.
involved behind the scenes of post. So what is your position, and what do you do in the whole post realm of post production?
Well, I mean, usually a post team is made up of a post producer like Patrick, who's the number one. Number two would be the post production supervisor, which is what I am, and the number three will be a post production coordinator, Megan. Um, so that's and maybe a PA.
Okay.
So we work behind the scenes to make everything look good. Whether it's good or bad. Uh, we polish. We make everyone on set look good, even though they might have made a mistake. We make the DPs look good. We make the writers look good, and ultimately we deliver. Like Patrick said, we deliver the final product.
Yeah, but when you say make them look good, like give me some examples.
Well,
What does that mean?
that's kind of tongue in cheek. Sometimes.
What you say, Patrick?
so sometimes on set they don't get it right, and we have to clean it up,
Yeah,
and that
yeah,
could be yeah, go ahead.
yeah. I was going to say part of it is just part of it is just cleaning up, and that's kind of what we're there for. We're kind of the last stop before it goes out, and it could be something as simple as you could have an actor drinking, a soda in a scene. So on take one, it may be half full. On take four, it may be, half, a third empty. So we would have to go into VFX to make that soda look like it's at the same filled level throughout the scene so that we could have continuity. So it's little stuff like that, or it could be someone could have a breakout. An actor could have a scar on their face or something like that from, playing with their kid over the weekend. we would go in VFX and we would clean that up. It could be something like, FedEx sign in the background that we'll have to clean up. These are the little things that we're talking about. It gets a lot bigger than that, but these are like the little, I guess things I can say that would make sense in terms of us fixing stuff.
Mm-hmm. So let's tell Megan, like, where are you from HBC wise, and how did you get from your journey from Howard to being in post-production in LA? Just tell us a little about that.
Sure, absolutely. So I graduated from Howard University, with a major in TV and film and a minor in graphic design. And I had a pretty fast-paced journey from Howard to LA. I didn't realize when it's time to get into TV that we don't work a typical 9 to 5. It's not the typical post-grad situation where you're sending out your resume 200 times and you're doing the cover letter and things like that. And sometimes the path to getting into the TV industry is simply just word of mouth, and sometimes just who you know and how strong your network is. And I had a friend who was working in a writer's room in LA and was like, they're looking for somebody to be a PA. Couldn't tell you what show or anything, but they want post. And I don't know anybody who wants to be in post but you. Do you want to give it a shot? And I'm like, yes. And everybody is no. And I'm really big on, and a part of the reason why I love post so much is I like to put the story together. And I think, in a general sense, when we sit down and we watch TV, that's a big thing, is we're watching the story together, putting the story together. But there's so many different processes behind that, whether it's when you're in the writer's room, when the actors are carrying, the characters that were made for them in the writer's room, to now in post, where there's color, there's sound, there's visual effects. There's so many different realms in regards to post. And so a week after graduation, I was able to interview and landed the job on the hit show Empire. And I did my first 3 seasons in TV working on Empire as a post PA. And that's kind of where my journey started. And
how was that for you coming into that? I mean, you're coming in from Howard. And how was that coming in for you, first job, post college?
It was a whirlwind, because you're not necessarily taught what a post PA does. And you're not necessarily aware of the ins and outs or knowing what post-production is. I think my experience at Howard was solely based on editorial. Let's figure out how to cut. Let's figure out scenes. Let's figure out continuity, but not necessarily the post side of things, that there's a world outside of sitting in a dark room for 16 hours or working with the showrunner or the DP or XYZ to get the scene exactly how you want it. So I went in knowing I want to be an editor and this is what I want to do, and I want to put the story together, and there's only one person that does this, and that's it. And about 2 weeks in, I realized that there's so many working parts once production has stopped, whether it's ADR, which is additional dialogue recording, or there's visual effects, or even the credits that make it on the end that sometimes people scroll past, but it also took somebody else days to type and proofread and make sure that everybody gets their credit that's due. So there's a world of things that happen once the camera's cut, that my eyes were open to very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's interesting. You wanted to be in post, but I want to come back to that. So Patrick, let's go with you, because I didn't know that a post-production supervisor was something that existed. So first of all, tell us where you're from, HBCU wise, and then your journey from where you're from.
Okay, well, I grew up in Hampton, Virginia, but I went to Morris Brown. I graduated from Morris Brown in '92, and right away I moved out here, and I started the journey in the post. I started off as a PA, doing runs. I started off on a TV. My first TV show was a show called Rock with Charles Dutton, Rocky Carroll, Ella Joyce, all those guys back in the, I think it was in the 90s. And then from there, I just went into a work program over at Disney. And that's where I started to get my sort of foundation in post-production and what it was and how it worked and all of that stuff. From there, I moved into television. I worked on the Steve Harvey Show, the original one back in the 90s. Did Judging Amy, The Shield, a few other shows. most recently NCIS, and then the game. So I did all of those shows working in post and just kind of moving my way up through the ranks doing that. And it just kind of kept growing and growing and changing and changing. And with the industry growing and changing, you start to learn different aspects of how stuff is done. And, it keeps you interesting and makes you want to learn more.
So your journey was to go straight to LA, and that's where you were headed. That you were just
it was kind of funny. It was either LA or New York, and this is when I was my junior year. It was either going to be LA or New York, and I figured 70%, 65% of the work was being done in LA. So there was an opportunity. I figured in numbers, there was probably a better opportunity for me to get a job in LA than New York. So I came out here and really just started beating the pavement and talking to people and calling people. And like Megan said, just started expanding my network. And, just kind of, it took a while, but it started to, get some legs and some traction.
And how did you get to post?
At Disney. I worked. Disney, I was a work experience program at the Disney Channel. And that's where I started learning about, editorial, sound, visual effects, graphics, and it was just literally like between the shows on the Disney Channel, they would do what we call promo islands. And it would be a 5-minute island, a 3-minute island, 10-minute island, depending on what they had to do to start the shows on the hour. And then they would fill the space in between. And so by doing that, I learned a lot about, like I say, editing, the sound. They used to do a lot of voiceover work and stuff like that. So that was sort of my tangible, transferable skills that was able to take me into post-production.
Okay. And Edgar, let's go with you and your HBCU experience.
Well, I mean,
grad school.
UVA undergrad, but Howard University for grad school, and where I got my MFA in film. Taught there after that as an assistant professor for like 7-8 years before I took a leave of absence without pay and drove out to LA and never looked back.
Wow. Well, you took the leave of absence without pay. Wow.
Without pay.
Risque.
Yeah. But what ultimately made me pointed me in that direction, it was a couple of things, but really there's a friend of mine, she was an adjunct, and she used to be out in LA. She was Karen Raper. She was writing partners with Unetta Boone, rest in peace. Unetta and Karen wrote on Rock, I believe. Did you know him, Patrick?
No, I think she was gone by the time I got there.
Okay.
But I do know
Karen. Okay. So Karen was an adjunct when I was teaching. And she said, when you go out to LA, you should meet my my buddy, Unetta. I went out there with some students, chaperoning some students for some internship they were in under Suzanne DePass. And I met Unetta, and pretty much that ultimately was my connect when I finally moved out to LA. And I was 37.
And who was Unetta? You didn't say who she was.
Oh, Unetta is was the creator and showrunner of a show called One on One.
Yeah.
And Cuts, but before then she wrote on Rock, Fresh Prince, another DC product. I think she went to Eastern High School, I believe, or McKinley.
Wow.
Yeah. So Unetta, had been out there with years, and her and Karen were writing partners. But it was Unetta's show was my first show, and I came out at 37, and they made me the office PA. So I was a 37-year-old office PA who 3 months prior to that was Professor Davis. Professor Davis, can I get an A on my my project? Professor Davis, can I get a C on my project? So to go from 3 months later, Edgar, no, not Professor Davis, Edgar, you forgot the wasabi on the sushi. Go back and get some wasabi. So that was in 3 months' time. I had to humble myself. I had to humble myself and say, huh? Yeah, I said 3 months later.
I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying it was humbling.
I had to humble myself to go back and actually get the wasabi and I did have ideas of being an editor, but I didn't know the whole post department. until I started working in the office, and I would run into the Post guys and realize Post was more than just editorial. So that was my introduction. And my first year, I did the gag reel, and everybody loved it. I edited the gag reel myself. And United said, "What do you want to do next?" I said, "I want to get in the Post." And just so happens, they made me the Post PA for the following year. And before the following year started, they said, "Well, no, you're no longer Post PA. You're going to be a Post coordinator." So it was like, bam. So that's pretty much where it started. And I worked my way up from coordinator to supervisor before they canceled the show.
And so I want to just
One-on-one.
say to the audience, this is really not the way it is. Like, I got three Black folks who work in Post, but it's not a large field that has a lot of people of color in it. So how has your, and I'm going to deal with an HBCU question since our theme is HBCU Film Love, but how has your experience, what you learned, the challenges that you had to overcome at Howard, at Morris Brown, how did that HBCU prepare you for all that you had to deal with when you got to Hollywood and trying to maneuver your way through to find a career? You ever thought about that?
Yeah, I would say perseverance. That's one of the things that taught us perseverance, persistence, try to be as prepared as possible to get through, because you don't know what you're going to get. And I think, coming through a school in Atlanta, especially with the history of Atlanta, being able to learn a lot about how perseverance and persistence was able to affect change. I kind of kept that whole, that was what was going on in the back of my mind as I made my journey out here. Just keep trying. I'll probably get 100 no's before I get one yes, but that one yes is going to be, what gets me through. So it's a numbers game. I learned that. Being in college, being at HBCU, those are some of the things that you taught, because you kind of know that you don't come in with, HBCUs are fairly popular now, but when Edgar and I were coming through, most people didn't even know what an HBCU was. If you say, "Oh, I went to college in Atlanta," they say, "Oh, did you go to Georgia Tech or Emory?" "Oh, I went to college in DC. What, George Washington? Did you go to Mary Washington?" What, same thing all around the country. They don't even know that these HBCUs exist. And it kept me in a place of being familiar with myself and continuing to try to get better and present myself as capable in any situation that they put me in.
The self-esteem and all of that comes with it, I guess.
Yeah. Some of that stuff is, there's sometimes, you get that growing up in your family. Sometimes it's something that you have to figure out on your own and try to build on that. So it's, I don't want to come out here and say, "Oh yeah, it gave me this great self-esteem," this and the other, because a lot of that comes from
how you were
reared, your upbringing, as well as you starting the realization that you make yourself as you're making the journey through life.
What about you, Megan or Edgar, in terms of college preparing you for what you faced? Especially Edgar, you're coming in having to really be humbled to start working as a PA, at 30 something from teaching. Is your mic on? Your mic's not on.
Yeah.
Mike.
Well, maybe Megan should step in.
Go ahead, Megan.
Can you hear me?
Now her mic's not on.
You can hear me now?
Okay, now I hear you.
Okay,
Go ahead.
There's Edgar. There we go.
Yeah. Megan, ladies first.
Okay. Did Howard prepare me? No. Transparently, I would say no. I will say that it was jarring for me to go from an HBCU to not only going into Hollywood, but also going into post, because post, like you said before, is not really an area where Black men and women are common. I've worked on now 6 shows, and I've probably worked with one other Black person in my department, and I've consecutively have been the only woman thus far.
Wow.
So I was not prepared for that. What which is a little taboo to talk about, was being the token Black person, because also a lot of the shows that I have worked on thus far have been a Black show per se. I started on Empire, and that show had a Howard alum as the lead. And I was the person to go to, well, does this sound good? And does this look good? And how does this hair look? And this wig and XYZ, and the things that we hope to not be the person to talk to or be that person, but I ended up being that in several situations. And when I started working on another show for both Netflix and Hulu, that was not a predominantly Black show, it was almost a 180 difference.
They didn't see you?
They could not see me, but also that my opinion wasn't as valued. So the turn of that, where Howard, it's like they push so much, or any HBCU, I'm sure, putting yourself out there, and like we were talking about before, self-esteem and asserting yourself and asserting your greatness, whereas once you get to Hollywood, everybody is great. So finding your place and space is an ongoing thing, and I think it may continue to be as you continue to climb the ladder.
So if I'm reading you, right, Howard was kind of a sheltered space because everybody was Black, your Black classes, Black interaction. So going to Hollywood, where there was not that, was more of a culture shock to you?
I would say for the day-to-day life, absolutely. But what I will say is also just in the regards of post as well, because in my classes, I maybe only took 2 or 3 editing courses, and it wasn't really a big conversation about post-production versus editorial. And a lot of the skills that I learned, I had to learn on my own, just out of my own curiosity and knowledge. So I think it was a little different in that regard too, that we weren't as introduced to all the aspects of what it takes to make a TV show or what it takes to make a film. So then when you get into Hollywood or the real world and you realize, oh, what is delivering a show? Oh, there's somebody who actually sits there and types all these credits, or back when we were delivering DVDs and that was a thing. And it's like, oh, this person has to watch this cut. How many different versions of this show happen before the audience views it on air? Oh, there's an editor's cut 1, 2, and to 6. And then we go on and on and on. So that was a little bit of a shock as well.
Interesting. What about you, Edgar? Turn your mic on.
Yeah, I really can't say. I mean, being at Howard and what I was able to do at Howard, I learned a lot about the technical side of post-production, because I would do post for my films and everybody else's short projects. So I had working knowledge, but the whole process and workflow of post in Hollywood, no. That's not something that they taught at Howard. I mean, that's very specialized if you look at it. You go to HBCUs or any school, they're going to teach you directing, editorial, editing, directing, acting, writing. But there's a lot of jobs in between those that are just as important to keep the boat afloat. And being in post-production, I had to learn when I got out to LA, that's one of the areas where, it's not as sexy or seen as those other positions. Mm-hmm. So a lot of film schools don't teach, as far as I know, at least back then, don't have a post-production track. It's something you have to learn or pick up, as you delve into that whole world,
But is it an old boys network? Is it an old boys network?
Well, they
don't teach it in white universities either, but they seem to be dominating in that field. So
I don't know if that's a whole conversation. That's Hollywood itself, and that's just post. That's just Hollywood, old boy, clicks, whatever. That's Hollywood in general. So not specifically just post, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Patrick, you gonna say something?
Patrick.
No, I was saying is that they teach the sexy stuff in school. They're not going to teach you administrative stuff. They're not going to teach you because there's a lot of tedious work that goes into making a television show or making a movie. You're not going to get, someone to come to your school to learn how to, fill out POs and call people to, show up for ADR. It just ain't gonna happen. So they get you in with all the sexy stuff, and then you get out to LA, and I can tell you similar to what Megan said. My first day on a real movie set, everything I learned in school was out the window, like it didn't matter. So I had to figure out, okay, I'm starting from the ground up. I need to get out here, and I need to try to learn as much as I can. Now, that being said, my cousin graduated from law school at the University of Michigan, and he said the same thing about that. He said he learned a lot in law school. He said, but he didn't learn how to be a lawyer until he got his first job as a lawyer. So it's not unique, but you do feel a little, I would say I felt a little cheated by the time when I got onto a real set, because there was so much that I didn't know. And I was like, well, why weren't they teaching us this in school? Why didn't they tell us about that? It's just little stuff. And a lot of that stuff comes from the fact that they're teaching theory in school. So theory is good in theory, but
Right.
in practicality, it's a completely different ballgame. There are always problems. There are always curveballs and things that we have to adjust to in the actuality of making a television show, specifically in post-production.
Mhm.
But keep in mind also that faculty, you go to a lot of schools, the faculty isn't really equipped to teach anything outside of those major sexy positions.
Well, they haven't been on sets. They going by books.
Yeah.
Faculty.
Well, yeah. And in a book, you're not going to see, post-production supervisor or post-production producer or da-da-da-da. You're going to see director, you're going to see producer, you're going to see writer, and you're going to see actor. So once again, I went to a movie last week, and a friend of mine was like, why are you standing here through this whole credits? I said, because that's what we do.
Yeah.
We watch every credit as an honor to those people who bust their ass on the set, but also to see people that I know him, I know her, and also maybe to see your own name. So outside of produced by, written by, directed by, then you got outside of that, then you got best boy grip, you got script supervisor, you got all those different positions that are just as important.
We also look at it in the sense of sometimes you'll go to a movie or you'll see a TV show and you'll be like, oh my God, that was a good show. Oh, the visual effects were great on that. Who did the VFX?
Exactly. And can I use them?
Yeah, but there's also the other side where, and we've all been in those situations when we've all been on shows where the VFX came out that weren't that great. And we would be going,
I'm not using them.
What's that?
Well, not only that, my name is going to be on this, because it's like, but what they don't know is that you didn't have enough time, or, didn't have enough money, or it wasn't planned for properly in production. And you guys were given something with no green screen, with no idea that it was coming, and said, oh yeah, we're going to put a city back there. It's like, well, that's going to be difficult.
You didn't tell Post about that. That wasn't in the production meetings. That wasn't in the production or the pre-meetings, or like. So what was that?
Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I'm saying, Patrick, we got a green screen, car and green screen. Where did this shot come from? That wasn't in the script, or
yeah.
When did you find out about that?
And it's going to cost $20,000 to have it, and you have a week to do it.
Do not bring up pain.
So when do they bring? Let's move over to that. When do they bring you all in? When is post brought in R&D, research and development, and pre-production?
It's
When do they
usually
bring you in, or should they bring you in?
we usually start like 2 to 3 weeks before. I'll usually start with the coordinator first because we're setting up vendors, we're setting up PO logs, we're getting everyone into the system of who gets what, petty cash, POs, getting the offices together. Supervisor comes in usually a week after to start preparing for picture because that's usually when we get a first script. Then we can start breaking.
Pre-production? You're saying to pre-production a week?
Yes, in pre-production. Yes.
Okay.
So usually about 2 weeks out, we get a script, and then the supervisor comes in, and that's when we start breaking it down for visual effects, what we may need, figuring out a budget, how they're going to do certain things. And then by the time we get to production a week out, the full staff is there. The first editor comes on probably 3 or 4 days before because they got to get their edit system set up. They have to get their assistant has to get set up. We have to set up the vendor with the post-production facility where we're going to be transferring our dailies, where we do picture finishing, and where we will be doing our final color. So all of that stuff is starting to fall into place. It's basically, putting all the foundational blocks in place in those first 2 to 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm. And who do you all mainly interact or deal with in a production? And I guess that has to be a stages thing, whatever, with different stages. But
yeah,
who do you interact with?
So I interact with the studio, the post department, production, and the showrunner, because I'm basically trying to keep all of these plates spinning. Supervisor would deal more so with the picture finishing facility, mm-hmm. and the coordinator is dealing with, on some level, most of the same people that I'm dealing with, because they're the ones that are, we need to figure out, can you send this schedule to this person? Can you get an idea of when this person is going to be available for ADR? Can you send an email to the showrunner and let them know that we want to do a VFX and sound spotting session tomorrow? So it's a lot of, wrangling and liaison work between all those different factions.
Well, I mean, are Edgar and Megan, are you all pretty much dealing with the same, he said, the same folks, the same people in production that come to you?
Well, we come to them because, all three of us have to deal with stage and dailies workflow. Your show shoots, whether your show shoots in LA where you are, whether your show shoots 3,000 miles away, you have to make sure that process flows. Who's doing the dailies? Is there a dailies post house in the city that production is in? How are they getting the dailies to editorial? Are there contacts at the post-production dailies place? Are there contacts on stage? Dealing with the production manager on stage, in the production office, whatever. It's a lot of, and then, what Patrick said, dealing with the network and the studio, dealing with marketing, because marketing has become a major thing, and
they have
international.
To sell the show. They have to sell the show. And so a lot of times they get the footage from. So I just want to back up a little bit. So for the people out there who aren't as familiar with the terminology, because sometimes we get caught up in our own head and start using slang and terms like that. So dailies is basically the raw footage that was shot in production. That's when you get scene 3, take 1, scene 3, take 2, scene 3, take 3, so on and so forth. All of that stuff comes as raw footage, as files. Those files are taken to a facility. We usually call it a dailies facility. They basically take those files off of a hard drive and put them onto a server and give them a color grade. That color grade is then converted into a DNX file for the editors and is put onto another server. The editors pull that footage off and then they start cutting it together.
What's a DNX file? Teacher, what's a DNX file?
A DNX file, it's a digital video file. I think it's specific to Avid.
It's specific to Avid, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's basically Avid's own sort of .mov file.
Okay.
So
Okay.
usually when they come in, they're dealing with like ProRes files, which are pretty big files, or and they want to compress them so that they can transfer them as smaller files to the editorial. Once we get a picture together and that picture is locked, we take what they call an EDL, an edit decision list. We send that to the final, to the picture finishing facility. They take that file, which is the edit decision list, the EDL, and based on time code, which is basically numbers and names that are given to the specific frames of every shot, they assemble the show in higher resolution. So it goes back to being sort of a 4K file, just to give you an example.
Wow.
Then with that 4K file, we look at which shots we need to make that are going to need visual effects work. Those shots are pulled and sent to the visual effects vendors. In the meantime, there's a final colorist who goes through the show and make sure that the color continuity is consistent throughout the show. So just to give an example, when you shoot a close-up, it may be a lot brighter. My face may be a lot brighter than when you shoot a wide shot in the room.
Right.
So what happens is in editorial with the DNX files, with the Avid, you'll cut to me, my face will be really bright, and you'll cut to the wide shot and it'll look a little dark, and then you'll cut to a close-up and it'll be a little too red or a little too yellow. So what the final colorist does is he takes all of those images and creates, it manipulates the color to make them look like they're all in the same space. Because sometimes they don't look like it's in the same space in the dailies, in the raw footage. From there, it goes back over. The VFX are done. They're dropped in. They're sent back to the colorist. The colorist make sure the VFX look right. Then we do. I'm just kind of giving you a quick rundown of the process, if that's okay. So from there, then we will do what we call a spotting session. In a spotting session, we sit with the editor, the showrunner, the music composer, the sound supervisor, and we go through the show and we look at spots where music is going to go, where we need specific sound effects, where we need to redo lines, or if we have to add a line, like someone is leaving out of a room and they're on their back, and we want to have them act like they're answering a phone, so we would have them say, "Hey, how you doing?" But you never see their mouth move. It's something that's added later. So
that's something that you would do in post. You would create that person coming in to a private audio booth. And
no, not quite. So if the showrunner decides that they want to add that line or they want to change a line or something like that, then we put that onto an ADR list. And we have to call the actual actor in to say that line. So it'll be their voice. And so we have to go to an ADR facility, a studio. And that's when the coordinator, Megan, would have to call them up, talk to their agents, talk to their managers and say, hey, we need them here on this date at this time so that we can record this line. A lot of actors don't like to do it, but it's written in their SAG contracts. So, I just keep it, they don't like to for whatever reason, but it's in their contract. So they have to show up. Even as going as far as saying, I'm in Italy, I can't come. It's like, where are you in Italy? Milan. Okay. An hour later, I want you to go to this address in Milan tomorrow, and we'll have someone there for you. So
yes, Megan, you would do that. You would contact that facility and as a coordinator.
Yes, I can say I have successfully scheduled a lot of international tracking actors down who are trying to run away from me because they don't want to record one line or one word even sometimes.
What is that about?
Barbados, they get paid for it.
All over, and they get paid for it, but it's a big part of my job is to find all these international ADR studios and get people in and out, because sometimes that line or that word can make or break a scene or make or break the show. And we need it.
And so who factors in the cost of that? That come out of your budget, Patrick? Or does that come out of
yes.
Oh, it does.
Yeah, but we budget for that.
Okay.
We budget for that. We have what we call a pattern budget. And some of those things don't change. So like when we're doing picture assembly, Edgar would go and watch the show being assembled. he would look at it, cut to cut to cut, what we call a split back. You basically take the DNX file and the final file, and they put like a line through it to make it one file on each side of the screen, and you watch it back to see if there's any movement, anything jumps. If it doesn't look seamless, then you know that there's something wrong, and those pictures need to be fixed. So Edgar would have to go in and figure out what's wrong, fix the shot, call the editor, call the assistant editor saying, hey, I need a new list, I need a new shot, this file is corrupt, blah, blah, blah. So it's a lot of stuff like that goes on. Sorry for saying blah, 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 but
Blah, blah, blah. It's okay. It's okay.
So all of that stuff goes on, and then
sometimes it is blah, blah, blah.
Sometimes it is blah, blah, blah. So then from there, once we do that, we would have to go to the mixing stage, the dub stage. But before we get to the dub stage, the sound team gets a hold of it. They're adding in sound effects. They're adding in Foley. They're taking those ADR lines that we got from the actors and putting those in and making them match the actor's mouth. They're also cleaning up dialogue. So for example, let's say that you were walking and talking, and in the middle of a scene, you can hear an airplane fly over. Well, there are capabilities now to where they can isolate the sound of the airplane, that frequency, and remove it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. When it doesn't work, we have to call the actor in to come in and re-say that line. Of all the years that I've been doing it, I think there was only one instance where an actor couldn't match their performance, and it had to do with the level of intensity that the actor had on the day that he could not recreate, 4 weeks later in a stage in front of a microphone. And it was just, and literally it was a conversation with him, and he was really frustrated because he couldn't do it. We called the showrunner, they had a conversation, and he just basically said to the showrunner, look, I've done this. I've been in here for, 2 hours. I can't get this scene right. Can we just go with the sound that we shot in production with all of the imperfections? And that was the right decision. The showrunner made it, and it worked out fine.
Okay.
In the scene, no one knew. So the sound effect editors, they're basically, like I say, door closing, door opening, horns, someone's phone ringing. Then you get the Foley guys, if you're talking and your clothes are rustling, or someone's walking across the floor or walking upstairs, or, splashing in water and stuff like that. So they'll create those sounds. So when you're in production, the bags that we use, like if you see someone carrying a bag, it's pretty much a soundless bag. So it's made of a material that doesn't make any noise. So a Foley artist would see you handling that bag, and they would be in front of a microphone with some sort of bag or something, recreating that sound. All those little tiny pieces are put together in a track. Even background noise, airplanes, traffic, mall, all of that stuff is sent over to the dub stage.
That's an area too, Foleying. That's an area that is really I don't know how you get into that, like how you would get into that area, but it seems pretty cool.
It's crazy. I mean, but even the loop group. So like if you go to if you see two actors in a scene in a restaurant, they're talking back and forth. All the people sitting in that restaurant are background people. They're pantomiming. They're not actually talking. They're just moving their mouth like, Right. So what we do is we hire a group of actors. We call them loop group actors. They're basically SAG actors who come in. Again, they're standing in front of microphones. They're looking at the picture, and they're sort of creating the murmur that you hear within this restaurant. That stuff is cut together, put into the scene, and it all goes over to the dub stage. And when you get to the dub stage, you have two mixers, and especially in single cameras, you have a guy who's doing background and effects, and you got another guy who does dialogue and music. The dialogue and music person is usually the more experienced person because you've got to be able to hear what the people are saying. So that stuff is cut together anywhere from 2 to 5 days in television. Most television shows have 2 to 3 days to do it. They mix it all down so that it sounds like it's in stereo or 7.1 or 5.1 or whatever you want. That's where it becomes the sound that you hear on television. What they do from there is that they will take that sound, that's the final mix sound, and match it up with the picture, which is the final picture that Edgar is working on, to make sure they're in sync. And that's what we would deliver to the network or to the streaming platform. So it's a lot. I know it's a lot, but I just wanted to kind of give a little bit of the line of how this stuff works, because we keep, the four of us keep jumping around, and people are going to be like, well, what the hell is that? So
no,
we started with that maybe, huh?
No, it's a lot. It's a lot to it, and there's a lot of players, like you said, involved. Let me ask you all this: the whole mentality that seems to be there. Let's fix it in post. I know y'all hear that a lot, and do you cringe at that? I mean, and our I don't know who, the AD producers, are they getting lazy to push it to post and not redo it, not do 10 takes?
Sometimes it's not planned. Sometimes it's just not planned. Number one. Sometimes it's for time. They're just in a hurry to get stuff done, and they don't want to stop to do it. But it usually costs more when you do it in post if you didn't plan for it.
Edgar, why are you looking
well,
like
no, it is. I mean, some of it is just spur of the moment. Some of it is not being efficient.
being nice.
and some of it is, and this is a whole opinion, sometimes it's overwriting, in my opinion.
What do you mean?
You have a 30-minute show that's written like it's a 2-hour movie, and you're trying to fit as many scenes in 30 minutes. So there's always pressure on production. Okay, get that. You got about 10 setups in one day, because you're trying to get, this scene takes place here in this location, and it's only going to be on screen for 30 seconds. And then you jump across the street, and that's going to be over 10 seconds. So you're trying to fit a lot more in scripts and short 1 hour and 30-minute scripts nowadays. They're trying to make them like mini movies. So, and I know that brings the production value up, but that means production has to push through the schedule. And usually you're talking about 7-8 days. Let's say 2 weeks for a block. You're shooting 2 shows at the same time. So you're trying to shoot a 30 to an hour show in 2 weeks time. Let's say 30-minute show. So 2 episodes in 2 weeks. And so you're pushing, so sometimes stuff gets lost in the sauce. Sometimes it's like sloppiness. And sometimes it's just like, we didn't see that, but we can't go back and get it. And then sometimes it's planned accordingly. So it's a lot of factors.
Sometimes it's standards and practices and clearance going, we don't have clearance to use that poster. We don't have clearance to show the FedEx bus.
Say that.
And I've had that happen on every single show that I've been on. Something didn't clear, or so I mean, there was a T-shirt that we couldn't clear. This was like 15 years ago. A T-shirt that we couldn't get cleared. We had to go into VFX and change the T-shirt.
So an actor was wearing somebody in props. I mean, in costume.
Yes. Well, it goes a little deeper than that. In this particular case, the costuming department got clearance from Live Nation. No, from Urban Outfitters. Well, the band was under contract or doing something with Live Nation, and then the band itself, the band members themselves, they had to be asked. So we had to get a 3-tier clearance where we had to get it from Urban Outfitters, Live Nation, and the band. Urban Outfitters and Live Nation were fine. 3 of the 4 band members were fine. That 4th band member said, "I hate that T-shirt. No." So we had to go into VFX and change the T-shirt.
So actually took the T-shirt and changed the design on the actor in every scene?
Luckily, it was in one scene. It was a $40,000 T-shirt. Yes.
Woo!
Yes.
Wow.
But that's
go ahead.
That's more common now. That's more common now with everything. Tattoos, pictures,
Yeah, I was going to speak to the cost factors of fixing things in post. I mean, that's crazy.
So I give an example. When I was on the Steve Harvey show back in, I want to say like 99 or something like that, Steve wanted to have his Omega Psi Phi shield on the set in the background. Well, Omega Sci-Fi is incorporated, so we had to get written permission and clearance. The studio, it was Universal at the time. We had to get written permission clearance from Omega Sci-Fi Fraternity Incorporated to have that shield on the set. Once we had that paper in hand, we were able to do it. So, and what happens is over time, you start to notice it. So, 3 years later, you're on a show and you see someone with an Omega brand in the scene because they have their shirt off, and you'd be like, oh, well, that's not clear. We have to remove that, So,
Wow.
Same thing with, I guess, any of the Divine Nine. You're probably going to have that issue because I think they're all incorporated. So.
And Megan, you're the one that has to go and fetch all this stuff down, get the paperwork, huh?
Sure is. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It is a daunting process, but we try to, at least in the shows I worked on previously, as soon as we get a script, to try and knock as much as we can out, in hopes that if anything that maybe wasn't cleared prior to in the writing process or on set or anything that we may spot in dailies, that we get ahead of it while we can. So we're not noticing this once picture is locked or once it's time to deliver and we have to unlock picture and start over again and add to the VFX budget that we probably are already surpassed.
Yeah. Ugh.
Yeah.
So,
And that, and what
yeah.
I was gonna say, and then
Don't you guys?
I wanna-
Doesn't everybody want to come out and join post-production and work in television?
exactly.
I was gonna say, what are your what is that your likes? What are your dislikes? What drives you crazy? What makes you happy? What you do? All those things.
Well, I'm
We
just saying,
love what we hate.
yeah,
We love the stuff we hate. The stuff that gives us joy, gives us pain.
yeah. Is that Frankie Beverly? What is that?
Love and pain.
But the thing, we're like, we're like firemen sometimes. We put out fires. So there's the stuff we know we have to do, and then there's that stuff that comes out of nowhere that we have to fix, that we didn't know about it. Or, fix it in post. Or post could fix that, especially when production's wrap and it's just you, editorial, and everybody else and the producers. And well, post could fix that, and there's nobody left but us. So we end up fixing something that wasn't our problem, at least initially, but
I
became.
have to say, though, real quick, getting to what Megan was talking about in the beginning, I have to say that there is a huge sense of accomplishment when you get to the final picture and you finish the show and it sounds great and it looks great and everything is in order. There's a huge sense of accomplishment. So it can be an overwhelming experience, but the more you know, the less I don't want to say less stress, but the more you know, the less surprised you are when stuff happens that's out of the ordinary. And stuff happens out of the ordinary every single episode. But then, again, it's a huge rush at the end of the process when you say, oh, we did it, the picture looks good, and you're happy with everything. Because, listen, in those concept meetings and those production meetings, there are a lot of moving parts. And you would be amazed that any television show ever got made. But there are a lot of moving parts. But somehow or another, we come together, we put these pieces together, and at the end of the day, hopefully we have a show that we're proud of.
Yeah, I was going to ask you also, what are some skill sets that you have or that you need for this job? Skill sets you didn't know you had that you learned about when you got here?
Detail.
Megan, I want to start with you on that because you do a lot of the cleaning up and.
Oh, let's see. One skill. The first thing that comes to mind is patience. I will say that. Which is not something as detailed, like Edgar said, definitely being detail oriented. That is post, is the details. It's the little things that the viewer may not see, but our eyes are trained to see, like continuity, visual effects, all different types of things require an insane amount of detail to be detail oriented, as well as patience. I think the other thing that I would say is being adaptable, and also my key phrase, the past 2 shows I've worked on where I've had PAs, because PAs is not as common these days, but I've been lucky to have a few I've been able to train, is that with post, you have to be able to pivot and quickly. think quickly on your feet and be able to pivot, because there are times where things will change at a drop of a hat and we have to work together to make it work, and usually on a deadline, especially if you're doing, network television versus a streamer where we have just a little bit more time. We're still on a deadline regardless, but at least I can say when working on Empire, 7-day turnaround, we're getting shows up and on the air, whereas working on a Netflix project or Hulu project where it may not come out till spring of 2024 and we're in, summer of 2023, deadlines always get pushed and moved, but the power of the pivot is really, really important, and be able to be adaptable.
Power of the pivot. That's good to know. Edgar, you were going to say something? You got your mic on, man.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, being able to pivot. That's why I said, being a fireman, being able to pivot and put out fires or address last minute requests or last second requests. And also just, you might have more time on a streamer, but that's more time for somebody to change their mind. So, whereas you're back, broadcast, you got 7 days, boom, boom, by hook or by crook, warts and all, you got to get it up. All it takes is one producer saying, you know what? I want that to be blue instead of red. Can we do that? We got time for that? Oh, wasn't that airing for a couple of months?
And we don't have time. The answer is always we don't have time. We will make it.
So it takes Patrick to say, to manage the expectations and talk people down from, you know what, that looks good as it is. That, you might not need that unless it's really important to the story. That's important to the story.
If it's major story stuff, if it's major plot stuff, major story stuff, sometimes you have to do that. But for the other part, it's usually, and sometimes they're persistent about what they want. It could be something as small as, removing something in the background, or something big as adding, a city skyline in the background. It's a matter of, do we have the time, or do we have the money, or do we have both to do this? And so, those are things that would have to be considered. And usually when it comes to needing, and honestly, showrunners don't really care how much it's going to cost. They just really, they want to get it done. And to their, I have to be, fair to them and say, they're not paid to manage the budget. That's why they bring in me. That's why they bring in line producer. That's why they bring in all the department heads. It's our jobs to manage the budget, not the showrunners. So we have to figure that stuff out, figure out how to get it done. And again, it's all in an effort to put out the best show possible.
So let me ask you this. Are you all union? And this is not a union. So is there, there's no protection for you?
No, but there are people who have been talking about that, putting us into one of the unions.
Oh, no, I was just wondering. I didn't know where you fell in the scheme of things. And how is this actor and writer strike impacting you all?
It sucks.
How are y'all doing?
We're not working.
Surviving, not thriving.
It sucks horribly.
Yeah.
I mean, we understand it. We understand it.
In solidarity with, but
we're not working.
Yeah. So I had a conversation with a friend. This is one of the few industries, I think, where people really want to go to work. People really like going to work. People, I mean, there's no way that you would do this if you didn't like to do it. So we all really like and want to go to work. And this is one of the few industries where that's the case. We don't really retire. We just kind of stop working or stop getting hired or whatever. We just kind of age out after, it's like being a senator or a congressperson or president, but we just kind of do it until we can't do it anymore. So it sucks for us all around because, all of us want to be on set or in the offices or cutting rooms doing what we do.
So I guess at this point, while you have this downtime, I was talking to casting, and they were, they're being impacted too as well. But the casting director Erica Holt she was just saying that she's taking this time to do things that she would never have time to do. Like she went to a friend's wedding, she would usually be rushing from that, and so she just enjoyed. So there's things that you can do. Do you all have any aspirations outside of posts that you're working on, that you're doing? Because I know Patrick and Edgar, producer, directors, filmmakers, Megan, is there anything? What are your aspirations, either in post to move up to, or outside of post?
Well, I'll say for
Something
me,
that gives you joy.
yeah, it's interesting because this is my first time not working on something back to back, or my first time having a break or an unplanned vacation in 4 years. I've worked on something consistently where I've overlapped shows, and this is the first time I've had such a long break that I almost don't know what to do with myself because I'm so